Welcome to the Operation Move podcast. My name is Zoe, and this week, this was actually recorded about 10 days ago, which goes to show you how I'm travelling. But this was a catch up with Kirsten, and we particularly focused on some strategies that you can implement with being restricted to 1 hour per day. So if you're in Melbourne, then this is for you. But it's also just great if you are looking at taking some of the volume out of your training, just reducing things a little bit, just to make other things a bit more manageable, to help manage your stress, all of that sort of stuff. So if you're just wanting to pare things down a bit or kind of just focus on the things that are most bang for your buck, then this is a good one too.
Hello, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I had to have something to eat. I had to have something to get a coffee a pink latte, and go to the post office. And it turns out my osteo appointment was actually at 10:30, not at 9:30. But the lady who was sitting there ready for her 9:30 appointment offered to come back at 10:30 for me, which was really lovely. So,
oh, that's nice.
Oh, that's country town life for you, right?
Yeah. We actually start talking about my car accident. So if you'd like to skip past the therapy session, then go ahead and jump to 15 minutes and 40 seconds.
And how are you feeling? You all right?
Yeah. Just I think that just all of the sort of like nerves after the fact. I haven't driven anywhere yet.
Yeah. You wouldn't need to drive very many places. Oh, you drive to run in the mornings, don't you?
Depends on the run. Like I think tomorrow it's sort of like a fartlek, which I would tend to run on flat. But if I don't feel like driving, then I could just do it locally. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't have to be on flat. It's probably just more fun for me if it is. And then the next time that I would normally drive would be sort of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to go down to the gym. But I feel like that's like also like a pretty easy way to start because it's like really early in the morning.
Yeah, not much traffic.
So not a lot of traffic. And I just think that I will feel a lot better once it's sort of like they've done their assessment of like my car and his car and said like, we think it's your fault or it's his fault or it's a combination of fault or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just to have it settled, because like if I have to pay that, like I don't really care about paying the excess. I just don't like having it
hanging over your head.
Yeah.
Do you have to pay? Do you not have to pay?
Exactly. And particularly when like my interaction with him, like understandably people get super stressed where their cars are involved and accidents aren't fun for anyone. But he was relatively aggressive.
Yeah.
Initially.
I think in general, like men are more likely to get aggressive about it than women. Like women are more likely to be apologetic, even if it's not your fault.
Yeah,
like
and so he sort of calmed down towards the end, but my conversation with him would also lead me to believe that he probably didn't have insurance.
Ah, right.
And so because he was very concerned that I did.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, like if we have a kind of different version of events and he doesn't have insurance, like this could make a very angry person considerably more angry.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, so that sort of like mixed in with the, like, so whatever, I just trust that he's taken photos of his car. They've got photos of my car. They'll be able to work out.
They'll be able to figure out
what happened.
Who should have done what. Yeah.
And whatever it was. Because my sense is probably what happened, he's from out of town. He's not a local. And that left-hand turn is really poorly signed, and so it kind of looks like there's a turning bay, but it kind of looks like that's the turning bay for the petrol station, but it's actually the turning bay for
the corner,
the shopping centre. And so I think he was turning left, but in a place where he shouldn't have been turning left. So I think that I probably should have seen him, because if he was not in the turning bay, there's a possibility that he was going straight. So I think I probably should have seen him, but also think he shouldn't have been turning from there.
Yeah,
that's sort
but
of
it's
like,
also if he'd made a mistake in that was trying to turn where he shouldn't have been, or didn't want to be, it's his job to make sure that he doesn't, that the traffic is clear before he changes lanes.
Yeah,
right?
So I think it's probably just one of those things where like it's a combination of me being on complete autopilot because I drive there all the time, and him possibly being in a position where he
maybe he was
have
a bit
been.
flustered and a bit confused about what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so I don't know, but either way, like it's I don't really care about what the outcome is, because excess isn't that bad.
Would be nice.
And, I'm not going to end up with huge premiums. It'll go up a bit, and then I'll get back to sort of like all that sort of stuff later on, but not to have it be this potential conflict with him, given that it was very clear to me that he thought it was my fault. So it's just sort of like waiting for that reaction when he potentially calls them today and goes like, no, this is my version of events. And then, which is also like just a grand.
Yeah, but he can have his version of events, but the damage speaks for itself on both cars, doesn't it? Because that's what
he
they
possibly
look at
also
when they
made
do
a mistake because
investigation.
he took off like some panels off his car. So he took photos before he did that, but it's also like, you just want people to see as is without you having then essentially disrupted evidence. But, that's his problem, not mine.
Yeah.
And so, that's also where, like, it's such a relief to have insurance, because that's their job to deal with.
Absolutely.
Like they'll do all of that negotiating. And we've been on the other side of it. Like Josh had a thing like when we were in Sydney where he hit a car from behind because they'd sort of like started moving forward like they were going to go. He assumed they were going to go, and then they stopped, and then he hit them. And, from behind, it's basically doesn't matter. It's your fault no matter what.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any insurance beyond like
the
CTP.
Compulsory third party,
And so, and their car was worth significantly more than our car. And so we ended up, like, the damage to their car was like close to 10 grand.
Wow.
And just like basically just had to pay it, and, like you might have gotten a better deal if you'd had another insurance company negotiating on your behalf. But when you're just one person, it's like, I think that we got a bit of a deal, and they said, if you pay this as a lump sum now, we'll give you a
discount.
Give you a discount. And that's the kind of thing where you can see why they do that, because there'd be so many people who just couldn't pay, who they'd be pursuing for ages. And so we just paid it. But since then, it's just been like, our cars, you don't have to worry about too much because they're not worth that much money. But like the potential of damaging someone else's car is just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, and particularly like his car, I think that when, I think it was like it probably only would have been like 4 or 5 years old. So a significantly
relatively
newer car. And, but I can't see any, like Josh keeps saying to me, he's like, he must have been turning because it's a big ass ute, and he would have, like, the damage to our car was like fairly minimal, and he would have been going too fast if he was going straight for it to be such a small thing, which I think is probably true. But and every time I think about that giant ute and like ploughing directly into Riley's side of the car, I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah. And was she in the front seat?
Yeah.
Yeah, scary.
And you just sort of like go through, like, there's a couple places that you can turn into that shopping centre. And I thought initially, I'll turn on the first one, and then I changed my mind. And I'm just. like the if only I had, sort of like, brains are stupid.
They are. They sure are, aren't they? And because there's nothing you can do about that particular part of the equation. And I mean, there's not much you can do about any of it. You've got insurance, you've done all the right things.
Yeah.
As far as you're concerned, you've taken the photos, you've lodged a claim, you're being proactive about it. Now you just need to get your brain on board.
Yeah.
To say just what will be, will be. It's out of your hands, you made the decisions that you made on the day, not knowing that was going to be the outcome, and so be it, and thankfully everybody's safe and well. Yeah. And, cars can be fixed or replaced or whatever. Like, it's financial burden, absolutely, but it's much better than the alternative, which is, loss of life or medical bills or, hospitalizations and things like that. So, but yeah, the overthinking, over anxious brain is going to be taking that to town.
Yeah. I'm just like focusing on like the things that I know. Like, I guess everyone has their individual thing that their brain finds soothing. Oh, look, we've got like a little customer who's going to come in for podcasting. Hey, buddy. And I know for me that's like, like organising things. Like
putting things in order.
Doing things with my hands. So like cooking or like crafting, like all of that sort of stuff is stuff that I know that my brain really, really likes. And so just sort of just doing that because, I can just tell from sort of like the dreams and stuff that I've been having that it's still like...
It's still playing in there.
Yeah, there's a level of sort of, I guess, disorderedness and sort of like I had a whole nightmare last night that was only about like sending Piper to school without a lunchbox.
Yeah.
Which, like when you're out of the dream, it's like, this is like the least stressful thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah, she goes to school like 800 metres down the road.
Yeah.
Just that like super easy. But in the moment, in the dream, it's a catastrophic event. Yeah.
So, I can tell that my brain is like...
It's trying to process it.
Trying to work things out. And it was interesting, ages ago, I heard this podcast with this guy who focused on his area of research was PTSD with vets, and he was sort of looking at it like not just from like a brain health point of view, but also like just even outside of the veteran community, like just mental health and why it's so challenging, and why like people go into these loops because like the brain recognises in some way that a part of it is broken and it's attempting to fix itself, but it can't get outside the loop because it's broken.
Yeah.
And you can sort of see how when these little things happen, and and in my case, like it was quite little in that like the impact was fairly minimal. Like we didn't get any whiplash, like everyone was okay. Like there was just like the two parties involved, and everything, like you're not in a situation where it happened like in the middle of a freeway where you're having to try and figure out how,
as far as car accidents go, you got it was pretty good scenario, really.
But you can just see how these things can just, and probably also like when you have a level of like the current environment is pretty stressful.
Got high level, like there's a high level of background stress.
Yeah, so I'll just keep doing
processing the way that you do
all of those things, and it will, and I think that it'll just sort of take some time to settle down. Meanwhile, like kids are so resilient. Like Riley was just excited about telling her exciting adventure story at school today. Yeah.
I bet she's going to be like a rock star.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Oh, well. Well, there you go, hey. Hope, just sing out if you're not okay, all right? Because it's a fine line between being okay and dealing with it and then all of a sudden not so much.
Yeah. And I think just... like just I think sort of taking it easy with the training was a good choice.
Don't put any other stress on board that you don't need to at the minute.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, just and you know, sort of lucky that it's in sort of a phase where you know, like
it doesn't really matter, does it?
No, kids are at
You're
school.
not doing any racing. The kids are at school. You can just take it easy.
Yeah. From Carolyn, who wanted to know, okay, so Melbourne people have got an hour a day where they're allowed to be outside. What is ideal training going to look like, or like maximising that time going to look like for somebody who's in Melbourne, which I think is probably a good, good for people who are in Melbourne, or like people who are sort of potentially looking at having similar restrictions, or just people who are time poor.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
Dealing with kids or work demands, you know, like there's so much more pressure on people to do more in less time at the moment.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, like they had all that stuff about, oh, you know, like you're going to write your novel in all of your free time. I'm like, what free time?
I'd like to clean my house once in 6 months.
Generally speaking, at the moment, my training is super predictable, which in the current environment is actually really nice. You know, like I've always kind of resisted doing similar workouts and that kind of thing, but I've actually found it quite soothing.
I was going to say it'd be very soothing at the moment.
So on Mondays, I normally do a 70-minute recovery run, and that is all I do on that day. I try to keep it. I've stopped going to the gym on that day because I'm like, nah, Monday is a really nice day to have it be a recovery day, because I do run every day normally.
Yep.
And then on Tuesday, it's either going to be, on some weeks, if it's more of a recovery focused week, it will be a hill run. Or on some other days, sometimes it's more like a fartlek type run, which is what it is this week. I think it's sort of like 3K, 2K, 1K efforts with like 1K easy in between, which is quite nice because it's a really long time in between efforts, and I like having it positioned as being an effort rather than a pace, so that's quite a nice one. Wednesday I do a long run, and Thursday is a recovery run. Friday is an easy run. Sometimes there'll be some strides in there. Saturday will be a workout, so it will either be like tempo or threshold type stuff, or it might be an easy progression run like I did on the weekend, and then Sunday's a long run. So most of those things go well over an hour.
But they can be titrated. They can be made relative to your, you know, you can still do tempo efforts within that. That doesn't have to be kilometre based. It can be time based.
So what I would
time based warm ups and cool downs.
Definitely do with that is one, which is one of the things I suggested that people do, is to warm up at home. Like particularly if you're like, if I'm doing a session, like let's say I'm doing that fartlek, ordinarily I would like warm up for sort of like 10 to 15 minutes. But with the setup that I have at home, I can easily hop on the bike air trainer and warm up there before I start the run, and that's inside. If I didn't have the bike trainer, then it would just be, you know, like a bunch of stuff to get the legs going, you know, like do some high knees in the backyard, you know, like do some jumping jacks, like anything that gets your heart rate up is going to be totally fine. So I would warm up in your backyard so that you're not like wasting that your outside time on your warm up or your cool down. And so then on the Monday, I would just do the 1 hour recovery run. Tuesday would normally be ranges in between 12 to 15K hills or whatever else I've got going on, but I would just do that for an hour instead. And just if it's sort of like just make it time based. If it's like a kilometre thing, long run, I would do an hour, and then probably do, if I could, like the remaining time like on the bike. So just at an easy effort. And then Thursday and Friday, they're shorter runs anyway, so keep them to an hour. Again, on the Saturday, which is a longer one, just like adjust the session a little bit to like warm up inside, make it a 1 hour session.
And then cool down inside even as well
afterwards. Yeah,
exactly.
And then long run, same. I just try to, just one of the things that I picked up from all of that time in rehab is just like do the run and then like make up the time on the bike.
Yeah.
So obviously if you don't have a like a bike or a treadmill at home, then you might look at going, okay, I might look at doing a sort of like a cardio-based session with bodyweight movements at home for a little bit of time after my run. So, you know, doing things like doing step-ups or, you know, like god-awful burpees or, you know, like just anything like that is going to... So that's sort of like one way to go, is just sort of like replace everything that you currently do. But then I also kind of think, you know, hey, maybe you've been under like a lot of stress and this is a perfect time to just do less and go say, I've got an hour. If I'm like outside exercising for an hour most days, I'm not going to lose a whole lot of fitness. Like that's a great base for anything, you know.
Yeah, and it's hopefully, you know, for all intents and purposes, it's only for a few weeks. It's only for 6 weeks. And I know 6 weeks is an awful long time when you're standing at the start of that time, but, you know, for 6 weeks, that could be a great, you know, that's an okay length of time to be having to reduce your running volume by if you need to, you know. And then once the restrictions start to ease a little bit, you're perfectly placed to start building your volume again.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of, I think that it can be a great time to sort of like focus on the things that you can do at home, like strength training or a yoga practice, or, you know, any of those other things that you usually ignore in favour of running.
Hang on a minute. Yes. So, absolutely. Like the things that you say you don't have time for.
Yeah.
Because running takes priority.
Because running's so much more fun.
It is, really. It really is. Let's not beat around the bush. So, yeah. And the other thing is you can always, if you do happen to have a treadmill, you can do part of your run on the treadmill, part of your run outside.
Yeah, so what would your week look like if you were dealing with 1 hour?
If I had to do 1 hour, so most of my runs during the week, at the moment anyway, I'm limited to maximum of 2 hours of running for my long run at this point in time because of my time. You know, I'm time poor. I'm doing a lot of things and trying to fit in half marathon training at the same time, and that means that there's only 1 day a week when I'm out well over that hour sort of our restrictions. So it wouldn't change a whole lot, I don't think. I think I would probably be inclined to do some warm-ups at home. So do your, you know, yoga before you run and some drills and things like that before I leave my driveway. And I would probably make use for my workout runs, be doing things like 200s, doing some 200-meter hard efforts with recoveries. They can be sandwiched quite nicely in between an easy warm-up and an easy cool-down. So you haven't got a huge amount of work to do, but it's, you know, packs a fair bit of punch for what it is, and you've still got an enjoyable run. I don't do a great deal of hills at the moment. My runs are usually reasonably hilly anyway, but I guess if I was doing a hilly run, it would depend. I guess you've got also the thing of the 5 kilometre radius
that's true.
to deal with. So I'm lucky in that I've got adequate hills within a 5 kilometre radius of my house. That's not a problem. My problem would be lack of variety. If I was only running within 5 kilometres of my house, there is only 2 roads to run on. And while that's okay because it's kind of okay, I run them a lot anyway, that could become quite monotonous. So I would have to try and counteract that with variety in what sort of hill efforts I might do. So short and sharp, 10 to 20 seconds versus long, slow, steady hill efforts. So trying to mix that up between different weeks. Lots of, the easy running would be just the rolling hills, just trying to keep it easy, concentrating on keeping that effort down and sticking to the hour. Time limit there. You could run an hour a day for 7 days a week, and you are going to be running, 50 to 60 kilometres a week, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's still a fair bit of volume.
It is, and I mean,
it's not a small amount of running. Even if you ran 7 kilometres in that hour, 7 days a week, you're still running 50k in that week, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to not lose sight of that, and that you might be, and if I wasn't, because I don't run 7 days a week. I run between 5 and 6 days a week, depending on how I'm feeling and what my life load is like. And so on the days where I'm not running, I would definitely be outside walking for that hour, making the most of having the choice to get out and taking advantage of it. Because being outside, just walking, a leisurely walk, doesn't have to be a fast-paced walk or anything. Just to be outside and be in nature is going to be incredibly good for your mental health, as well as your physical recovery. So it's and your tempo efforts, like I said, you can titrate those sort of things instead of doing lots of tempo, or however many 5k of tempo or whatever else. You can do you can do 10-minute tempo or 5-minute tempo efforts and have a rest break between efforts, and you can still get a really solid tempo run in an hour, including your warm-up and your cool-down. So, but I think, like you said, being smart about the warm-up, being smart about the cool-down, make the most of that hour that you have to be outside.
Yeah, and I think also keeping in mind that there are things that are going to give you a similar stimulus to a long run that aren't a long run. So there's definite research that backs up the idea. And sometimes these things aren't fun, which is why people prefer the long run. But there's ample research that indicates that, say, for example, if you did 7 30-second sprints with loads of recovery in between each one, so you could take up the full hour.
So you're doing max effort for your 30-second sprints.
Is going to be just as good as doing a 1.5 hour run.
Yeah. Your cardiac, your aerobic adjustments and, gains that you'll make would be equivalent.
Yeah, and it's just that most people find running for 90 minutes far more enjoyable than 7 sprints, which is why
it's
more
decompressing
popular.
as well, isn't it? That time out, and it's also, let's admit, it's time away. It's time away from your family. It's time away from life and your responsibilities. It's a bit of escape time where you just get to do your own thing, which, let's face it, as mothers, that time can sometimes be in short supply and high demand. And so, having that time out. So I don't know what the restrictions are around taking your kids out and like letting your kids outside for walks and things like that. But I would try and maintain as much of a boundary around that hour of exercise being your time to do your thing that you need to do to decompress from all the other stresses that are in your life. And there's a hell of a lot at the moment.
It's so much more obvious now. Like it seems like every time in the last month that I've gone to sort of like sit down at the end of the day for, like my meal, or, if I'm having a glass of wine, or like starting a crochet project, like all of things that I associate as like me time, just like eating or whatever.
Yeah.
There's been, and I've only got 2 kids.
Yeah.
But one of them is I can't find this.
I know.
I've just eaten like 5 kilos of food, but I'm still hungry. Can you make me something? And I'm just
I
like,
know.
and
Just eaten every 5 minutes for the last 6 hours, but Mum, I'm hungry. Can I have a banana?
and so so part of it for me with like getting out is really helps with that, but also it has been a good opportunity given the age of my children to also like start putting some boundaries up with them to say, I will do that after I've finished eating.
Yeah.
You know, and like you can do whatever now while you're waiting, or like whatever else, or do it yourself, or, you know, like that kind of stuff. But like, I'm doing this now. I will help you when I'm ready to help
and you
you.
need to wait.
But even that, you've then got like an activity hanging over your head. So,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And there's
know,
almost a temptation to clean up all the other things that need to be done before you sit and relax and do your thing. But all those things are still going to be, you know, they're still going to, other things will pop up. It's never a clean slate, is it?
Yeah.
But this is like quite similar. I find myself thinking this is really quite similar to what I was dealing with back in December and January. January in particular, when I was restricted as to how much I could run. It was Jack had just not long been diagnosed with his diabetes. He was 9 at the time. My husband was away a lot for work, and you know, I think he was away for 4 weeks out of 5.5 or 6 weeks. So that running time for me in summer with the bushfire smoke and with, you know, 4 kids and not being able to leave home to run, and I was running laps of the driveway and laps of my small road, and you know, it was very much a matter of it had to be outside. The treadmill, while the treadmill was running, it was not the same. It did not give me the mental benefits, the mental health benefits of running outside. And being outside in the fresh air or the smoky air, whatever it happened to be, it was very much a matter of how am I feeling today? What can my body give me? And that dictated what the effort was. Sometimes it was a feeling of I just have to get out of the house and I just have to run, and I was able to, you know, maybe pick up the pace a little bit. It was a feeling of sort of freedom and release. And then other times it was I haven't had much sleep. I'm really tired. I need to move my body. I know this will make me feel better. But all I've got today is an easy run. Or all I've got today is walk run intervals. And that's all my body was able to give me, because I was also still recovering from the 100K down at Falls Creek. So it was kind of, and you're dealing with, you know, 40-degree heat every day. So running at 5:30 in the morning or whatever, you know, you were sort of trying to make the most of the situation that you had. And I think for me, one of the things was to make sure that what running I did do was running that filled my cup as much as it could. So that meant that the treadmill was not really an option, because it's not a cup filler for me. It's a necessity.
And because it's, you know, like, and it probably would have even been different if, say, like the weather conditions were so awful and you were like going to like a local gym to go on the treadmill there. That probably would have felt different as opposed to the treadmill that's in your house.
That's in my garage, and it's in my shed, and and the kids can still come out and find me, and that sort of thing. But I think so. That was a really important thing for me to do, was to try and find the joy in the running that I was able to do. So within the restrictions that I had on me at that time, what could I do that filled my cup or gave me joy? And it's a little bit the same even still now. You know, I can't leave Goulburn to go and run in Canberra or, you know, whatever, to go and do nicer trail runs. I just have to make do with what I've got available to me in my town. And I can't, and with my work schedule at the moment, I'm limited to once a week being able to get on the trails, because it's still too dark at 6:37, 6:30 in the morning, and you know, I have to be home in time to get ready for work on the weekends and things. So I'm only getting in one trail run a week. So, but you know what? I make sure I try and get that one trail run in a week to offset the road running that I'm doing, and also to get in amongst the trees and amongst nature, and see, you know, listen to the birds and away from the traffic and things like that. So I'm trying, you know, you try and work within your restrictions, whether that's time restrictions or distance restrictions, or, you know, your work schedule or whatever. And now it's lockdown in Melbourne, that you kind of just have to look at what you've got and work out what can you do with that that's going to tick as many boxes as possible.
Yeah, and it's
and,
good
and not forgetting that personal joy is a really big box to tick.
Yeah, and I mean, even from a fitness point of view, there's really good research to back up that say, for example, rather than doing a long run at a slower pace, you get better aerobic fitness by improving what you can run, sort of like just under your threshold type of thing. For, you know, just what you could run for under an hour, so, which is sort of like what is similar to sort of like what I've been doing with those sort of like 10K runs, which for me are probably more around about the 50-minute thing. And it's sort of like with the focus of like it's a hard run, but it's also like something where I'm feeling good, you know. So it's not like doing a time trial. And I tend to do that, like that's been every 4 weeks. But if you wanted to sort of like replace something once a week, you could do like a more, you know, like tempo-y type run for, you know, like 40 minutes or whatever. And it's probably going to be just as good as running for 2 hours, aside from like personally that you probably get a lot of joy out of like those long runs. So it's not quite as good in that department. And I think also like I do much the same with like with the hill runs. There are loads of hill runs that I could do that are probably easier than the one that I do, because the one I do is it's like basically going down a big hill and then running back up rather than a rolling hill situation. And the rolling hill situation would probably be a lot easier because you're not having, you know,
you don't have that sustained uphill effort as such. You've got it's broken
for like 5Ks or whatever. But that road that I go down is like I rarely see any cars. There's a significant amount of it that's dirt that's really nice to run on, and you're just surrounded by trees the whole way. So I always choose to run there because it's just a much nicer place to run, even if it is like a little bit harder. And there's just like keep paving over like my dirt roads around here, so that's the only one that's
so
left.
rude.
That other one that I used to go on is now completely paved over, and I'm like, oh man,
that's so sad, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, like I think that picking those things where, and sometimes when I've done that run too, I've been like, I might end up walking back up today.
Yeah.
And being cool with that. It's like, that's fine, you know. That's and you know, like often on those days you'll get a bit of a surprise and I feel fine on the way back up. But yeah, I think that it is that balance. Yeah, she's come in here because she was meowing at the back door. Now she's decided, it's a bit boring in here. Yeah. Isn't it cute? Yeah. And I think it is that balance between, I know, like, because I've been really kind of hampered sometimes with time in that she's just attempted to jump up a glass door. It's like, that's not going to happen. Like with that time before school drop off, you know, like I've been really focused on, okay, I need this to be work time, so therefore everything that I do in the morning has to be done by like 7:30. If I'm going to the gym in that time, then that's like an hour at the gym and an hour and a half or whatever afterwards, which probably works out to be about an hour, because by the time you know, change shoes, say goodbye to people and, you know, like get yourself organised. And what sometimes I've found is that you can erode some of the joy by kind of like jam packing
trying to
things
shove everything into
in
the
there.
same.
And like, while it might be ideal from like a training point of view or from like getting everything done before like work starts, what is the point if I'm out there stressed about when I need to get back? And so I've tended more recently to go, you know what, I would rather go to the gym, come home, like do some work if the kids allow me to do some work while I'm getting them ready for school, and then go out during the day when I don't have that kind of threat of like, oh, you know, like I've got to be finished by that. And particularly too, because some of it has also been making peace with the factors. Like, I used to sort of get really frustrated with myself. I was like, this is an hour run. Like, how is it taking me from start to finish, like an hour and a half? And it's because I'm out there creating content.
Yes.
You know, like I'm taking photos for Instagram, you know, like, and that takes time, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, okay, well, it's not just that I'm running, that's also sort of like photographing and creative process time. So sometimes I need to go, okay, like this is a day where I just do run, don't document or take pictures or whatever. I'm just going to run and come back.
Yeah.
And then other days I have more time, but creating like more of that white space around the time means that I enjoy it more.
A buffer.
And I think that would also be my concern if we got to it being an hour restriction here and within a 5K radius, is that my structured brain would want to like program the hell out of that 1 hour, but I would then have to take a step back from that and go, okay, but you're not going to enjoy that because you're going to be so stressed about fitting it all in. Because a lot of times, like with a workout, like I'd have like a warm up, and then I'd do some strides, and then I'd do some drills, which admittedly all of those things I could do like in my backyard before I go out, which I would do. But I think that a lot of the enjoyment that people get from running is feeling that freedom. And if you're feeling kind of like hemmed in of what you need to fit into the hour, it can sort of like take a bit away from that. So I kind of feel like
absolutely.
I would rely on the weights to create my intensity, and I would probably do a whole lot of easy running because I really want to enjoy it.
Yeah, and it comes back to that: when everything else is hard, don't make your running hard.
Yeah,
you know, when everything else is really difficult, make your running easy, because it's, you know, so it's not a chore, so it's not something that you feel like you have to do. It's just another burden on your day, or you know, like that hour outside that you get to run, that could be filled with joy or it could be filled with dread very easily, you know, couldn't it? So,
and particularly
when life is hard,
getting to the situation where sort of like running in a mask becomes more necessary, then, you know, like you're not going to want to do anything that's not easy.
Absolutely.
That would be a lot more uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I was thinking as well that you could make yourself some personal challenges. So if you get yourself a map of, you know, your 5K radius of your house, that you could make up some segments within that area. You could try a run every street in your 5K radius. You could make a deal with yourself that you pick a new route every week. And you can also, you know, use it to, you know, to try and, you know, see if over a period of time you are actually improving your time running one of those particular loops that you've got within your 5K. That 5 kilometres is still a decent, like that's still that's a lot of streets. If you live in suburbia, that's an awful lot of running that you can do, and that will keep you busy, I would imagine, if you keep things interesting. And, you know, if you're trying to keep things interesting and run different parts of your suburb and all that sort of stuff, because let's face it, we've all got our favourite ways to run, right?
Yeah.
I ran on Saturday. I ran with a friend, and she's like, "Well, let's run out here." And I said, "Oh, I've never run out there. I've been running in this town for 6 years, and I have never run in that area of town before." So, it was, um, uh, we are creatures of habit. We have set places that we like to run, and we have set loops that we like to run for our particular workouts, and all this sort of stuff. So, keep things interesting. Make it a bit of a personal challenge on a different level, where it's not just about kilometres, and it's not just about the statistics of it all, but it's actually also a bit of discovery about where you live.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a calculation based on 5Ks. That would mean like the perimeter of 5Ks is 30
Yeah.
kilometres. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, there aren't convenient circles
Yes.
that you can run around. But I do remember when, when we had to run in my postcode.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those areas where, like, it's a decent area, but it's not as huge of an area as like maybe some others are.
Yeah.
So like I was sort of like couldn't go down into Ballina and couldn't go like up to Lismore, so it was sort of like more within this area. And it's amazing how many places that you can find to run in that.
Yep.
Particularly, I guess, like a
Absolutely.
bit more regional here, so not dealing with a whole lot of like small streets, so you can kind of like find a road to run along for a decent amount of time. But also, I mean, there have been times when like I've had a workout which has been very specifically dirt road, and I've had to run 20 Ks doing 1 kilometre back and forth, and like you do what you've got to do.
You do, absolutely you do. Which we all do things like that every now and again. But it's like there are things that you can do, absolutely things that you can do that that will maximise that time that you've got outside. And if you're not spending 2 hours or 3 hours running on a Sunday, or on a whatever day you happen to do that, then you've got extra time for some yoga, or you've got extra time for some gym work, and or you've just got extra time to sit down and drink a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And read a book, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. So I think we get so fixated, don't we, on, well, this is how much I run and I have to maintain that. Like, this is my base mileage, and that's what I do. That's part of what defines me as this person, the runner. And it doesn't. You have to. There has to be a certain amount of flexibility that comes, that you use to deal with circumstances that are just out of it's completely out of your control.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I've
it's
even
okay
been thinking about that lately.
Take the pressure off.
In terms of like, as the period of time between where we are and like quote back to normal, whatever that looks like, and it keeps getting pushed further and further back. Like, it wasn't that long ago that I thought that, like Melbourne Marathon had a very decent chance of happening, being towards the end of the year. And now I look at the Olympics next year and I'm like, I don't know.
Oh,
like that's sort of like middle of the year. And it's going to be different because that's an international event. Like you could look at, like maybe like things within Australia and think, hopefully by midway through next year there'll be things that we'll be able to do, but that we might not be there yet. So as it's sort of like extended out now, it is one of those things where you kind of, in the first period, you're just like, well, like I'll just do what I've always done, and like this ship's on autopilot, and like there's no reason to change. I like training, and I like running, and like this is all good. But as it's progressed, it's also sort of like been one of those good things where it is like an opportunity to look at it and go, okay, but like obviously I love running, I'm always going to run, but why am I doing it this way? Like, is there would there, if I ran, but ran this little bit less, would I enjoy it more? You know, like, is this taking up the amount of space that I want it to take up? You know, because like all of the choices that you make, it's always, if you're saying yes to something, you're always saying no to something else. So if I'm saying yes to running every day, then I'm often saying like no to other things, you know, like whether it's like what I'm doing on the weekend or, you know, or whatever. Or, you know, like if I'm going, okay, like I want to do this run and I also want to do this sort of mobility every day, you know, like what am I giving up in terms of like, you know, like time that I might enjoy doing crocheting on the couch or whatever it is, you know, like there's always a trade-off. Don't have infinite time. And it can be a really good time to actually kind of dig deep and go, but why? Because there are loads of things that you do that you never even question. You know, and it's sort of been similar to me with CrossFit as well, and particularly in the current environment where you roll in your square. Yeah. So there's like, I really enjoy spending time with the coaches, and you get to have a chat with like your neighbouring square people. But you don't really have that sort of that time like at the end of class or beginning of class. You're not really like talking too much, like
the camaraderie goes, doesn't it? And it's been replaced by a hypervigilance,
and you know, you're like spending a lot of your time afterwards like wiping down equipment, which is great because it's a very conscientious environment in terms of like people being separate, and it's like it's a smaller gym, so you only ever have, you know, probably 20 people in there anyway. But as I've gotten deeper into it, and it's like, okay, this is not my sort of, this is like an adjunct to my primary thing. Have to get up at 4 to be there. And, you know, like I know why I started doing it, you know, like 5 or 6 years ago or whatever it is. And I know that it's definitely benefited my running in a lot of ways. So that's not like that doesn't like not like
it's not an empty space.
And I know that like I really need that help in terms of like form pointers and everything else like that. But there are, for all of the things that make sense about it, there are a lot of things that don't really make sense as well. And, you know, it can be like a really good opportunity to kind of look at it and go, well, I pay this much for this, which I do, you know, usually 3 times a week. Maybe I'd actually be better off like taking that and doing one session with a PT once a fortnight. Like how much of this is actually still working for me? Because you can get into this kind of thing of like, well, this is a habit and this is just what I do. And then after a while, you kind of just have to take a step back and like, how's that still working? And sort of similar to what I had done work with, like with a nutritionist in the past, is like kind of looking at those, like, why do I reward myself with food? You know, like, what's that about? Do I feel great after I've eaten 5 donuts, or do I feel like crap? Do I actually enjoy the behaviour, or am I just on some kind of loop of like, this is what I do? And, you know, and so like one of my sort of like breakthroughs in that is when I had a really good run, and I didn't feel like I was depriving myself, but I chose to reward myself with buying shoes instead of buying food. And I felt really good about that. And it's not like I would never sort of, like I'm all in for like celebratory meals, but ones that I actually enjoy.
Yes, not just like there are not just mindless habit.
Ones that I don't, you know, like some of that sort of Christmas eating, I'm like, oh, I actually don't like this. And there's other ones that I really do, like the local place who does the most amazing French toast.
Oh, that French toast.
This like lemon curd and coconut cream. I don't even want to know like what the
who cares what the
I don't care.
Are. It's not about it.
What the calorie content of that is. And that is one definitely worth it, and also doesn't make me feel like crap afterwards. You know? And I also noticed that with the those homemade crumpets you bought me, is normally if I have like the store-bought crumpets, it would not even like touch the sides as far as breakfast is concerned. It's like it didn't even happen. And I had like a few days where that was my breakfast, and admittedly there was significantly more toppings going on the crumpets than normal. But I was saying to Josh that morning, I said, it's amazing how much more satiated I feel
after them
from like from food that's less processed like that, you know? And I felt like completely satisfied, good breakfast, didn't feel like bloated like you can do after, you know, eating some sort of bready stuff. And it was sort of like a good reminder that this is why, you know, like going to the extra effort of making things is worth it, because you enjoy it more and you feel more satisfied.
And having a little bit more mindfulness about it as well.
Exactly.
And that goes for everything, doesn't it? It's not just about the special breakfast or that treat after the long run that you get to have maybe once a fortnight or whatever. Like, it's about everything. It's about being mindful in your choices in the way that you spend your time, isn't it? And that it does still include exercise, doesn't it? You're working out the things that you do to keep you fit and healthy and you know, happy. It all counts. So and you know, making the choice to add in the yoga, or making the choice to add in the strength training, or making the choice to find the joy in your runs, in that, you know, if you're restricted to an hour a day of outdoor exercise, that you try and find the thing that's going to bring you the most amount of joy, so you can you know, be really mindful about it rather than just going through the process.
Yeah, and I think I would also be really aware with that. Like, if I was restricted to an hour, probably my favourite times to go running are usually like in the morning for like sunrise time, or like twilight in the afternoon, probably my two favourite times. There's less people, so it's more just sort of like you out there.
And nature turns it on. You get a sunrise or a sunset. You get a bit of art in the sky.
You know, so I think that also just putting a bit of thought into when that happens, so that you're going to enjoy it the most. Because for me, there's been a few times where I've gotten out like way too late for a long run, and on the way back, it's just been like, you know,
horrible.
Dodging people like left, right and centre. And you've got like people who are in a completely different zone to kind of like morning running zone, and they're sort of like, they're out, you know, for their leisurely walk, like 5 people across, and you know, and I think that runners in generally are aware of like sort of people behind them who need to get past, but people out for a walk maybe not so much. So, you know, just keeping in mind what's going to give you the most enjoyment time-wise, and then what of your behaviour do you have to change for that to happen. Like, so if I was doing just morning runs, then I really need to be like prioritising getting to sleep at a decent hour, so that I can enjoy it. So it's not like I had a couple of sleep-ins post accident, a bit more than usual, and even though like I think I originally woke up at, you know, like probably just like a bit after 5 this morning, but because I'd gone to bed at like 7, that was a big sleep. And you really, like, I think that if you get into a habit of like always getting up early, you just kind of normalise what that feels like on subpar sleep, and then you catch up on sleep. And I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, okay, so this is what it feels like when I'm actually properly rested, even though it's at an early point in time where I decided not to go for a run this morning and go back to bed for a couple of hours. But at 5:30, loads of time to get out, like by the time the sun's up, and go for a run for an hour before the kids go to school. And so, I think it's really easy to downplay that sleep, and particularly for people who are doing like their work from home and stuff, where you know, like schedules all over the place, because it's like it's almost too flexible for its own good.
And there's no boundary. You know, that boundary between work time and home time is so blurred that, you know, if you need boundaries, if you're the kind of person that really thrives with that kind of routine and scheduling, that's you know, which is totally fine. You know, that's maybe that's something that you need to, you know, you need to do, to put some boundaries in your day, to say, well, this is, I want to set myself up for a great day. So I'm going to set myself up in the best way that I know how, which is to get up early and go for a run. Or, you know, to make sure that that thing that I want to do that's really important to me is done first thing in the morning, before the kids' stuff. You know, because these people are not just working from home, but supervising home learning as well in a lot of cases. And, you know, so the day runs away from you really, really quickly. And if you've got that frustration hanging over your head of, oh God, I just want to go for a run, like, you know, these things just keep getting in my way. If you get it done early in the morning, you know, it's done.
Yeah,
and you've got a sense of accomplishment already.
If you're more of an afternoon person, what, like I said to, because Josh has been adjusting to working from home, because like obviously I'm used to it, but he's less used to it. And I've even found, like, particularly with him being at home, like there's so much less boundary between like work and being at home for me, even though technically it hasn't changed that much. But I guess because
he's home as well
I'll
during the day.
often see him working at 6 o'clock at night, and you know, like, and my schedule has been more all over the place. So, like, I was saying to him, I said, sometimes, you know, like, I just have a shower when I've finished my work for the day as this like physical boundary between I've finished work and now I'm home. And if you enjoy afternoon running, that can be a great thing to put in there
and
too.
Danielle said that she likes to use her evening, you know, that afternoon run as the signal that the work day is done and now it's time to, you know, to be at home. You know, that transition from working from home to just being at home. She said she's made comments that's really helpful for her. So I know while it might not be something that's enjoyable for me, but it's or for
depends
for many,
on the type of work you do, I
but
guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're on your feet all the time, but for us computer types.
Yeah, but it is kind of, you know, sometimes it's nice to go for a run after work, but most of the time you just feel too tired and too drained from being, you know, for being around people or being too busy all day and whatever. And the last thing you feel like doing. But at the same time, a little bit of fresh air does, never goes astray.
Like, oftentimes too, just like like going for like a 20-minute walk or something can be quite nice. Like, I remember when I was commuting for work, I actually found like the commute quite helpful to have that sort of like gap in between work
that
and
debrief
home,
time,
just decompress. And particularly when like I wasn't driving, so I wasn't having to focus on that, and you're just kind of like sitting on the train or the bus or whatever, and, you know, like listening to music or doing whatever it is that you choose to do. And so I think that sometimes creating those little like micro barriers,
those little breaks
between things can really, really help. And probably lately for me, it's been on the days that I do strength training, I do that after work is finished. And that's sort of like quite a nice way of breaking it up, and I'll just sort of like go and listen to a podcast and, you know, do whatever else, and, you know, I think things like that can help, particularly when you are in a situation where you are, like, particularly for people in Melbourne, they're just going to be home more. You know, like in terms of restrictions of like where you're going to do your shopping, how many times you're allowed to leave the house, you know, so there's a lot. There's
so much to take into account, isn't there? And do you remember, like, just because so-and-so is doing it, it doesn't mean that it's, and it works for them, it doesn't mean that it has to work for you as well. Like, there's space to create your own way through this, and there is no right or wrong thing to do. So, you know, it's, and you don't have to necessarily, if you don't want to, you don't have to take advantage of that full hour every day. If you only want to run for half an hour, run for half an hour. You know, if that's what floats your boat, if that's what makes, you know, brings you joy and happiness on that day, then that's totally fine too. You know, we've none of us done this before.
Particularly if
there isn't a rule book.
Super crappy weather. You know, like sometimes the idea of going out, like I quite enjoy like running in light rain, but running in torrential rain is less than fun, particularly if there's wind involved. It's just
I know, right?
It's just a bit
takes the enjoyment factor way out, and it becomes something that you really have to, you know, you stop asking yourself, is this something I want to do? And you just say, I'm just doing it. because nobody really wants to go out and run in the wind and the rain and, you know, run tempo intervals or do a long run or whatever. Nobody really wants to do that. It's so much nicer if it's nice weather. But yeah, it's light rain, pleasant. Torrential rain, not pleasant.
Yeah, and sometimes I get shoe regret. I was like driving down to do my progression, and I was like, right, it's not raining, I can wear the white shoes. And I was driving down there, and it started to rain, and I'm like, you are kidding me! Like,
oh my God!
Luckily, it wasn't much rain, but the shoes still got a little bit dirty. I was a little bit upset.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there's just a lot that's going on for everyone, and everything seems like pretty sort of like heightened, you know, socially and politically as well, which can be like the amount of times that I sort of like see a couple of news stories and just like I can't, like I have I try to have that balance of like knowing like what's
knowing
going
enough,
on
but not
keeping informed,
disappearing down the rabbit hole.
But not like kind of like getting into all of that like super divisive political stuff that you know that happens, which doesn't really help anyone. And so. And you know.
And we have to remember too that everybody's experiencing this in a different way. Everybody is dealing with this in a different way, and everybody has got different stresses in their lives that they are trying to find a way through as well. And you know, I think giving people the benefit of the doubt and the space, you know, there needs to be a bit of graciousness and space allowed as well for people to find out how to make it work for them or how to deal with it as best they can, you know, or not deal with it, because let's face it, sometimes none of us are capable of dealing with it at times. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's okay for it to just look different on any given day, isn't it? It's just and to reach out to people, keep checking on people, and you know, asking people how they're doing, I think is really important, as well as a completely different, you know, it's not running related, but it's human kindness related, isn't it? It's compassion, having giving people the opportunity to say how they're feeling without being, you know, attacked or blamed or, you know, having fingers pointed, and as well as I think it's really important to remember at the moment as well. So there's
just, I think that it's always,
and when all else fails, you just have a kitten meowing in the background, right?
She's very interested. What are you doing? She's honestly, it's not like having a baby, but it is in some ways. You know, like I'm not so far gone that I remember that babies were highly, highly demanding, but in the sense that I can never like come into the office without her getting separation anxiety, yes. And then you've got the added cat part, which is like, oh, okay, well, I'm bored now and I want to go back to where I was, even though I was unhappy there.
And the tiny daggers on their paws.
And
the needles in their mouths.
And I think the cats are going to be in for a really rude shock when like there's not somebody home all the time.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Because it's just like they're just going to have to sort it out. But I was talking to a friend of mine about the problem with cats is, like, we had one cat and we thought that given that he's an inside cat and we have inside cats only, that he needed some company to keep him occupied. And so we got a second cat, and which works really well for him. He is very happy all the time.
Yeah.
But he's not quite entertaining enough for her. And so now I feel like maybe we need a third cat.
You probably do. The answer is always more cats. I can vouch for that.
I don't think that Josh is on board with this cat theory, but
we can work on him.
You know, like, wait until the preteen is a teenager and he might feel the need for more love, you know?
I think so, yeah. I agree with that. I've just I can see out my bedroom window from where I'm standing, and there's a kookaburra has just landed on a branch in front of our dam. And he's just a big, fat, happy-looking kookaburra.
Kookaburras are the best.
He's beautiful. I love him. But, yeah, he's flown away now. Anyway, so, yeah, it's no, well, we've decided we're going to get a puppy. So it's
what breed was the puppy?
She's a blue heeler. So we're going to have to be she's a cattle dog. So we have to be super on top of her training and making sure she's a well-behaved dog, because there are some undesirable behavioural traits that can come along with the breed, and that won't that we just we're not keen on. But so we just need to make sure that she's well behaved, and we are really careful with training her to do the things that we want her to do and not the things that we don't want her to do. But she's in 12 months time or so, she's going to hopefully make a really good running companion for me. So and the kids are super excited. So, and considering we've had two feline deaths in the family in the last 3.5 months or so, last 3 months, we need a little bit of new life in the pet stakes in the family. So to brighten everybody up. So yeah, otherwise it's all a bit of doom and gloom. But but she's coming. She's got her little yard being built for her this weekend, and then we've got and she's got a kennel, and the kids are now fighting over whose room she's going to sleep in. So I said, let's just wait and see what her personality's like, and
I had
and
very
see what
real
she wants to sleep.
When we first got Basil, who's the older one, that because the kids were a bit younger, that they might literally smother him with love. Like, because he was definitely like the runt, really tiny, and they're incredibly over the top. Level of affection was like, like it was just
full on.
Yeah, it was full on, and so it was a lot easier. They were just that little bit older with Sunset, so it was not not something that I was so concerned with. But it can be all consuming.
Absolutely. So we're wording the kids up with boundaries about when the puppy's needing some, when the puppy's in her bed, she needs to sleep and she needs to rest and all this sort of stuff.
Kids aren't overly sympathetic to the whole
baby
animals need to sleep
argument,
business, are they?
Because they spend their whole lives determined that they're not tired, whereas puppies are quite puppies need their sleep. So it'll be it's kind of good, I guess, that the kids will be at school during the week, so that the puppy can have time to rest and grow and all that sort of stuff. But she's the runt of the litter as well, so she's a fair bit smaller than the rest of the crew, but that'll be but that's she's pretty cute. So we'll have to next podcast we'll have to do an update on the new arrival. So
you have to go, but I think that I have a feeling like the last time that we talked on the podcast, we were going over your 10K training, but I don't think that you updated everyone.
So my 10K, my 10K plan that I did, so super fast. I did. I had a time goal of 50. I wanted to do sub 54 minutes, I was aiming for 54-minute 10K. My PB at Melbourne last year was a 56. and a half minute or thereabouts, 10K. And yeah, so I managed to do, I got a friend to pace me, and so that all I had to worry about was chasing her.
And was she just aiming for sort of like even?
So yeah,
splits?
we were trying for even splits. It was we started off a little bit slower. I think we started off around 5. We were aiming for 5:20 pace, and we started off at 5:30. We did 2 kilometres at 5:30 pace, and then we hit 5:20. And I think I managed to hang on to 5:20 pace until probably for the next 5.5, 6Ks maybe, and then I fell back to 5:30 pace, I think, for the last 2Ks. I was hanging on for dear life, but I managed a sub 54-minute 10K. I got 53 minutes and 40 seconds. So, decent buffer there, I guess. And and I smashed that goal. So I got a new 5K PB while I was doing it. I got a 26-minute 15-second 5K. So I was really pleased with that. And I've never raced that distance before. So the 10K PB I got at Melbourne Marathon last year, it was supposed to be an easy run. I hadn't intended to race it, and like 2 days beforehand I'd done a 5-hour run up in the Dandenongs. So I wasn't at my best that day. So again, I didn't really go out with the intention of trying to set a PB. It was just, this feels good, so I'll stay at this pace until it doesn't feel good anymore. And it just, felt so good until about, 8 kilometres in, and then I thought, well, I may as well just hang on now. So that was a purely accidental occurrence, and so this was the first time that I'd actually set a benchmark and done a training block with the intention of taking time off that benchmark. And given that that's, in nearly 6 years of running, that's I've always just gone for the next distance, or a different challenge or something. So gone from the 5K to 10K to half, full, 50K, 100K, trying different distance, like different events or different distances at the same event and things like that. So it's a very rare occurrence for me to try, sort of challenge myself like that. But it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. So now I'm working on a half marathon qualified just in case Two Bays goes ahead in January, the Two Bay Trail Run. Because I've got an entry for that. But again, if it goes ahead, so I need to do a sub 2:15 half marathon. So I need to, but I'm restricted with time because I'm with my work and my shifts at the moment where I'm working. It's 2 hours is about the longest I can manage for a training run. So for my long runs, so I'm trying to work within that constraint. And as things change with the COVID stuff, then that may change again if we happen to have a spike in cases in New South Wales or in my area. So it will be, but I've got till, my plan is to do that in November. So either at the Canberra Marathon Festival, which at this stage is supposed to happen in the first weekend in November, I think, around the 7th or the 8th. And failing that going ahead, I'll do my own time trial. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I'm monitoring that, because depending on what the restriction levels are in Melbourne with Two Bays in January, they might open it up for more entries. So
they might.
Sort of like paused at the minute. So I've sort of like put notifications on for that, because like if it is on with a plan to go, but you just have to see. You just don't know at this stage what it's going to what it's going to look
And
like.
if it doesn't go ahead, then if also, like, even if it does go ahead, it might be for Victorian residents only, or it might be that, and because I work for New South Wales Health, I have to be really mindful of any travel restrictions that, that New South Wales Health puts on their staff, and so if things are still too hot down, COVID-wise, too hot down in Victoria in January, then I may not actually even be able to go. So I'm not doing it I'm doing it with the intention, obviously, of trying to qualify, but that's not, like, I want to do it for its own sake as well. So I'm not pinning all my hopes on just being able to qualify for 2 days, but I'd really like to try and get as close to 2 hours as I can for a half marathon time. So trying to keep it all in perspective and stay curious about what I can do. So I'm just trying to build some endurance over some, tempo, speed, endurance.
It is amazing too. Like, I remember when, like, I was probably close to more than a year or so ago. It was probably the first time I had come up with, like, it was like a 10K sort of like tempo-y run. It had come up. And I always sort of looked at it and was like, oh, it looks really hard. But I think that in my mind I was still thinking of it as like an hour. And even like the difference between, like 50 minutes and an hour is like a lot.
It really is.
And I think it's the same with the half, is like you kind of, like, when you're first doing it and it's taking you 3 hours, like that's a very different event to when it's taking you 2 hours. Like, they're almost
like marathons, isn't it?
Different races,
Yeah, there's a big difference between a 6-hour marathon and a 3.5-hour marathon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it should be, it's an achievable challenge, I think. It's just, and it's a process. Like, I don't feel at the moment, if someone said, you need to be able to run at this pace for this long, I'd be like, that's not going to happen, because last time I ran a half marathon a couple of weeks ago, there was no way that was happening. But, I've got till November. It's a process, and that's what coaching is for. So, so I don't spend my whole time second guessing what I'm doing. I'm just doing what my coach is telling me to do.
Yeah.
And it worked for my 10K, and it's worked with all the other events that she's coached me for. So, that's what the money is, isn't it? You're paying to trust somebody else with the thinking behind it. I just have to do what I'm told. So,
and it's always sort of like my program doesn't change that much, but you just get nice little surprises, like, oh, all of my long runs have gone down to 22Ks for the next month. So like, that's interesting. Yeah. And then it's like, like my hill run has gone up to 15Ks. That's nice. And, like, you just sort of...
But you don't have to be the responsible for the maths behind it.
No.
And the theory behind it. You just do what that's something as well, that if people are, wondering what to do with their hour a day, get a coach and let them worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do.
Outsource
and like
the
pretty
worry
much
and outsource the thinking. Do it.
All of the running coaches I know have coaches.
Yes.
Because it's like if you believe in the process, you believe in the process. And also when you are doing the sort of the mental work for, like, all of the people you coach about what they're running, like,
you don't necessarily want to have to do it for yourself as well, do you?
No, it's so much easier to have someone else do it, and you just kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing today. Sweet.
Yep.
And it just, I think that, and then you can just trust, like, that they will look at, okay, they're improving, and then looks like, we've hit a bit of a blockade here, like maybe they need more recovery, they'll change a few things up, and it's just all things that you don't have to think about. And I'm really pleased that I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm more than happy. I, quite willingly, happily, joyfully hand over my money for my coaching each fortnight. It's just so, I just, I don't, it's not that it's not that you don't want to have to think about it necessarily, but it's just, somebody else has, I think, a better view of the whole picture because they're standing outside it, rather than standing inside.
There's certainly things that are programmed for me.
Because you will always push yourself harder than you need to be pushed, I reckon.
Yeah, I doubt that I would sort of
and you will end up overtraining yourself very easily.
Pick for myself,
know,
like it's sort of like, not, and I usually enjoy them while I'm doing it, but it's always going to be in a different style to like what you would do, and so like it can be just one of those things where it's probably more than what I would do if I was like doing it on my own, and in some ways probably less than what I would do. And there's sort of like that interesting combination. And because the reality is that you're not really going to know if something's working until sort of like 6 months down the line. Anyway.
And it also gives you an opportunity to learn. There's more than one way to skin the cat each time, isn't there? It gives you the opportunity to learn from, when you move through different coaches over time, like not necessarily changing them as, super often, but every coach has a different coaching style. Everybody has a different approach, and it's also offers insight into what it's like to be coached. And to be coachable, as well as, being on the other end of that and coaching others. But listen, I better go. Otherwise I'm going to be late. But, but reach out, people who are struggling for, in lockdown. Reach out in Run Club and reach out on the Facebook and Instagram and things like that, because we're always here.
Any questions that you know, or like if you just send me a message and say, "Tell me what to run today," I'm more than happy to boss you around.
Absolutely, love it.
Anyway, have a good rest of your day, Kirsten.
Yeah, you too, Zoe. I'll talk to you later.
See ya. See ya. Thank you for joining us today. If you would like any more information about Run Club or Learn to Run or any of the other stuff that we've got going on, that's all in the episode description, and so you can check it out all there. Have any questions, feel free to drop me a message, and we will speak to you next time.